after the sitting, I'll do another guided reflection for us, which will be tied to what I want to share with you in the Dharma talk today. Yeah. So let's just see. So yeah, like can sit like for like 25-ish minutes. So you have a sense. And one thing to remember if you're newer to meditation is it is not one solid block of meditation, but what we're doing is we're just having this container where we keep bringing the attention back. Yeah, and just noticing the mind will wander. Of course, the mind will immediately leave the building and be with all kinds of things that are actually not present in this moment. And to notice that and to not judge that and to know in that moment when you notice you have a choice. You have a choice to come back here into this room, and you can come back into being here. And the best thing to do that is actually to connect with one of your senses. Yeah. So traditionally we use the breath. Breath can be a great anchor to connect with, but it doesn't have to be the breath. Yeah. So if just feeling the breath makes you more anxious, more restless, then probably focusing on the breath is not a good anchor for you today. And then you can use the sensations of your feet. You can focus on sounds, right? So the question you can ask yourself is always, is what I'm doing helping me to be more here? Yeah. So we want to learn to be more here than lost either in the past or in the future. Yeah, which is usually where the mind goes. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just like we want to train the mind to be more where we want it to be in any given moment. Yeah, because the mind, the unchecked mind can go into strange and not always helpful places. Yeah. And so we want to train ourselves with kindness and consistency to come back to right now. Yeah. And assuming that of course, not always, but very often, right now is actually okay to be with. Yeah. While some of the places where our mind goes might, again, like not be very helpful, might make us more anxious or more agitated or more restless or more worried or all these things, while it's pretty nice in here, isn't it? So for us here, sunny, and I can see for some of you, you also still have maybe some sun in there online, right? So, and you might also be in a different time zone. Yeah, but if you're at home, I hope that's comfortable where you are. Yeah, and so can you stay with here? That's our practice. So, all right. So inviting you to find a posture that is supportive for you. So as you can see, you can sit on the floor, you can lie down, you can sit on your chair, you can stand up if your body is quite in a lot of discomfort. Actually, sometimes standing up can be helpful. And then inviting you to either to close the eyes, again, if that helps you to stay more present, or just to lower the gaze. So sometimes, and again, like what you're doing, even asking that question, is you're checking with yourself. Is this helping me to be more present right now? And then starting to bring attention to where the body just touches the ground or the mat, the cushion, the chair, just feeling into those areas of contact right now. And then maybe noticing what qualities of that contact can you actually feel? So can you feel whether what your feet are touching is hard or soft. What you're sitting on. So the connection, or if you're lying down, can you again like feel into that contact? Hard or soft or rough, or like what can you feel? And then maybe for a moment, just feeling into your hands, bringing the awareness to your hands. So we usually can feel our hands really well. So can you feel contact or the position of your fingers? What are your hands touching right now? Is that warm or cold, or again, soft or hard, rough or smooth? And then if you're using the breath as your anchor, inviting you to maybe take a few longer, deeper breaths. Sometimes it can be helpful to place a hand or both hands onto either your chest or your chest and your belly, just as another way to connect with sensations. So again, we want to get out of our head and into sensing, into the body in a way that feels okay, that doesn't feel overwhelming. So if you're sensing the breath, like notice, where do you feel the breath? In the chest, at the belly, at the nose. And then noticing when the mind is gone, when you're find yourself somewhere else, like at home or at work or with a problem, and you have a choice. You can very kind but firmly say thank you, not now. And then just bring the attention back to sensing in this moment. And then at some point, just letting the breath flow naturally, if you've deepened it before. And just resting the hands in a way that feels comfortable. And see if you can not judge the wandering mind or not judge your experience, but just become aware, and then, if needed, to redirect the attention. Noticing where the attention is right now. And remember, you have a choice. And sometimes it can be helpful to kind of check the level of effort that you're using right now. Because sometimes we're using too much effort. So then it's helpful to just ease off a bit, maybe lean back a little bit more, And sometimes we're using too little effort. We're kind of just flopping around. And then it can be helpful to just tighten it up just a bit. So maybe sit a little bit more straight. Like lifting your crown, lengthening through the spine if that's possible. And coming back to this moment, just right now, keeping it very simple. And remembering part of our practice is to keep starting over. A new breath, a new moment. Again, just letting go of all the moments before and all the moments to come, and just be here for this one. If we want to live our life to the fullest, we have to start with this moment. Don't save yourself up for a better moment to come. So, and in another minute or so, we'll bringing this meditation to an end. Oops. And maybe taking a moment of appreciation for yourself that you took this time to practice and to be with yourself. So I would like to start my talk tonight with telling a fairy tale. Maybe we can turn the AC down. Yeah, you're on it already. Thank you. Mhm. And so here's the fairy tale. So in a far away land, in a far away time, long, long time ago, there was a kingdom or a country that was ruled by a wise empress. And the wise empress became very old and she didn't have any children. So she didn't have an heir or an heiress to her kingdom. And so she thought of a task to find a worthy follower, new ruler for the country. And then what she did is, so she called all the children of the kingdom to her, and she gave each of the children a seed. And she said, the child that will grow the most beautiful flower from this seed will become my successor. Or maybe she gave them a few seeds, a handful of seeds. And so the children were super excited because here was their chance to become the emperor or the empress of that kingdom. So they all went home and they planted the seeds. And there was a little girl, and her name was Nola. And Nola had loved planting seeds her entire life. She loved gardening. She knew how to plant something and to make it grow. So she planted the seeds, put it into good soil in a good pot and watered it and put it in a good location so it was good sun, it was warm enough, and waited, and nothing happened. And she said, that is so weird. Like, why isn't that growing? And then she planted it into another pot. So she said, like, maybe the soil is wrong. I need to put like more nutrients into it. And she planted it into another pot and then waited and nothing would grow. And so time went by and she was just confused why nothing would grow. And then the day came when the empress called all the children back to present what they had grown. And the children would come with these amazing plants, the flowers and the pots. And it was just like so beautiful, all the colors, and everybody was so excited. And the families were so excited. And they were hoping that their child would be chosen to be the new emperor or empress. And Nola, she was sitting at home with her pot and nothing grew. And she didn't know what to do. And then she talked to her grandmother and asked for advice and said, well, what shall I do? Nothing grew. And then the grandmother said, well, listen in with your heart. What is your heart telling you? And so Nola did that. And then she took her pot and brought it to the empress. And then when all the children with all their pots and their plants were gathered, and then like some of the kids gave her like little Nola, like a look of just like, what are you bringing? Like an empty pot? What's that about? And then the empress was just watching over all the children. And then she stopped when she saw Nola and said, why is nothing in your pot? And Nola said, well, I tried really, really hard and I couldn't make it grow. And this is what I got. And then the empress said to all the children, I gave you seeds that were boiled. They couldn't grow. And you're the only one who brought me what could have come out of those seeds. And so Nola became the successor of the empress. So that's what I want to talk about today. So what do you think that story is about? Honesty, bringing your most authentic self, courage, yeah, vulnerability, yeah, equanimity, yeah, also connection and love, getting advice from a trusted person, yeah, acceptance, yeah, yeah. And so what I want to talk about today, or go into a little bit more depth with you, is so we talk a lot about, or like a very central part of our practice or Buddhist practice is what we call Sila, yeah, or ethics. So really deeply understanding that what we do or don't do matters. Yeah. And you've probably, I mean, how many of you have heard about the Five Precepts, the ethical guidelines? Most of you, right? Yeah. So, and I just repeat them. So and they're training guidelines. Yeah. So they're not commandments, but they're training guidelines, just like they're very, very commonsensical. Yeah. So they're like 5 guidelines. And some people say if you just practice the first one with all your heart, all the other ones are embedded in them, in the first one. And the first one, and so what is quite interesting is, so the way that the Buddha phrased them, the 5 precepts, are he phrased them in the most extreme way. So the first one is to not kill. Yeah, to undertake the training principle to not kill. And you might go like, I'm not killing, right? That doesn't apply to me, right? And then we can also apply it to just like, well, is there some part of yourself that you're trying to kill? Yeah. Is there something in your environment that you really, really, really want to get rid of? Yeah. And then, oh, now we're talking, right? And then what's interesting is so we have this like on this like one end of the spectrum. And just imagine people would stop killing. What world we would live in. Just that. Yeah. So sometimes because it feels like, oh, that doesn't apply to me, it's just like, oh my gosh, that applies so deeply. Right. And then the beautiful thing is that we can see the precepts on the spectrum. Yeah. So if we say that is like one end of the extreme or one end of the spectrum, then we have like a middle thing. And a middle thing could be like to practice to not harm. Are we talking now to that we can take that on as a practice to try not to harm ourselves and others? Yeah. And that includes in the teaching actually all sentient beings. So that's not just for humans. But I think we would do pretty good if we would just start with humans, including these ones like ourselves, yeah, to practice not harming ourselves. And then we have the other end of the spectrum. Yeah. So what's the kind of if this is to not kill and the middle is to not harm, what would be the other end of the spectrum? Care. To care, to help. Yeah. Love. Yeah. To practice loving kindness. Yeah. Like, oh, right. And you can see like there's so much practice here. So then with the second one, so the second one is to not steal. And then we can say in the middle is to not take that which is not given. Yeah, we live on stolen land, right? So just to say that, it's like, oh, yeah, this land was taken, just as an example, right? And then on the other end of the spectrum is then to, so what's the opposite of not stealing? Giving, generosity, right? What a beautiful spectrum to practice with. Yeah. And then I just because actually don't want to talk about the precepts or as a core of my teaching today. And then the third one is to be careful and loving with our sexual energy. Again, such an important precept. Yeah. So to not harm with our sexual energy and to protect it. Yeah. And then the fourth one is how we use language or how we use words. Yeah. So it's about truth, but it's also about kindness. Yeah. So how are we using words? Yeah, are they true? Are they loving? Are they appropriate? Are they timely? So there's like a whole teaching around that. How are we using words? And then the last one is to practice to not intoxicate our minds. Yeah. And that can be, of course, like with all kinds of substances. And at this point, I think like we really have to look at like, what are we doing with our phones? Yeah. So that level of trance that we get into, yeah, the numbing out and the checking out that happens with our phones, right? Which are designed to do that actually, right? So these are the guidelines, and which again make a lot of sense, right? You don't have to be Buddhist to go like, yeah, like if you want to be like a decent, loving person, that probably makes sense to you. But then it's not that easy, isn't it? It's not that easy to, yeah, to actually to practice that and to stay with that. And so what I want to talk about, or kind of the core teaching for tonight, is what in Buddhist psychology is called, there are different translations. So the word Hri, so I'm opening my notes here now. Hri and Otapa, so two terms, which you don't need to remember those, but they are, the Hri is spelled Hiri, and the other one is spelled Ottapas, Ottaappa. And they are, the Buddha called those two the bright guardians of the world. And what do they do? So those are the skillful mental qualities or states that safeguard our ethical behavior. So they protect ourselves, and with that, we protect the world. Yeah. And so the way that we practice, and it becomes more refined and fine-tuned the more we do it and the more we attune to it. So let's say speaking the truth is important to you. Yeah, so it's a value. You could also call it like yeah, a core value. Yeah. So honesty might be a core value. Or like what could be other core values where you go like, this is really important to me, and I want to live my life kind of in accordance with that. Like, can you name some others? Integrity, yeah. Joy, yeah. What else? Generosity, yeah. Equality, yes, yeah. Loving kindness, yeah, yeah. What else? Say again? Free speech, yeah. Yeah, so just something, so as you're naming your values or your like core values, so what happens within you when you're acting against them? Say again? You're conflicted. How does that show up? Constriction, stress, yeah. Self-harm, yes, yes. What else? Say again? Depression, guilt, yeah, yeah, yeah. Heat, yeah. Shame, yeah. Can the people online, can they unmute Alexis? Yes, okay. So you can also like unmute and please join join the conversation. Something happens in you, right? Would you all say, like, if this is something that's really important to you and you're about to, or you've done something, it does something to us, doesn't it? Yeah. This is what this is about. Yeah. This is what this is about. And there are two to it. So one is, so the first one, so what does that do to yourself? So they're like the shame, the guilt, the constriction, the depression, all of that. So when you're like acting against something that is really important to you, this is what is called free. This is the first term. Yeah, and it is, so I give you some translations, and it's tricky to translate because we have such loaded associations with some of the words that we're translating them into. Let me just see. So Hri we could be translated as an innate sense of shame over moral or ethical transgressions. Yeah. So it's an internal reference. And like one way that I like to, like that I actually like the best is like it's self-respect. Does that resonate? So self-respect is a proximate cause, right? So basically what it says It is a feeling that comes up when you're basically about to transgress with something that's important to you. Yeah. And I'm not talking about like the cultural shame or the shame that we have like got instilled into us through our parents or our culture. So that's a separate conversation. Yeah, but really something where you go, this is really important to me. And then life is complex, right? We do things that we have to do at times things that are not in alignment with that, but it is something that we can feel. And the Buddha calls this, again, it guards us. Yeah. So it is almost a compass that says, you're off, you're off, you're off. It alerts you to that. And that's a really good thing. Can you see how that is safeguarding, how that is a guardianship, yeah, of something that is like, I actually don't want to do this. Or it's this sense of like, have you ever had this, like when you're in a seductive situation, let's say that, right? So there is this sense of like, I'm not the kind of person who does that. Have you ever had that? Have you been in a situation? Yeah. And then again, like sometimes external circumstances are just very, very strong, and we have to do something that is not in alignment with our core values, but we feel that, right? And it is often actually a regret that we can carry with us for a long time. Yeah. Because, yeah, we can feel it. And if it's something that matters to us. Yeah. So it's like an internal compass. And what happens when we practice this is we actually become more. You notice? Whoops. What's that? Let me see. Oh, no, it's just me moving. It's not the batteries. Yeah. Have you noticed that with practice, you become more sensitive? Yeah, of course. Like whatever we pay attention to, we notice more. Yeah. And what is important to us, like we sensitize ourselves. Yeah. Um, So that is the part of like it's kind of the internal sense, like a self-regarding, self-honoring. And then the other one, otapa, and they go hand in hand. That's a very interesting. So let's say, um, so you're in a conflicting situation and you're thinking about what you're doing. How would somebody who you really love and respect feel if they knew what you're doing or what you're about to do? What is that doing within you? Does that question make sense? Yeah. So if you, let's say again, like, yeah, let's say truth is really important, or speaking your truth is really important to you. And then you're in a situation where you go like, I could just not say something or say something that's actually not true. And that's way more convenient. And I don't have a long discussion, or I'm avoiding conflict with that, right? And then if you had like a friend or a teacher, yeah, who you really love and respect, and for whom you also know that truth is really important. And you imagine, how would they feel if they knew you were kind of moving off your intentions? What is that bringing up in you? What's that doing to you? Or maybe you don't have a person like that. Yeah. But imagine if there was something or someone, how would that feel? Shame? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You wouldn't want to disappoint them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And and this is what this is about. Yeah. And so this is like an external orientation, an external safeguard. Yeah. So in the context of the teachings, right? So we would say, well, you have teachers and you have a sangha for whom working with the precepts, so in this context, is also really, really important. Yeah. And then depending on like your belief system, right? So you might or might not believe in karma, right? But even if the word karma doesn't mean anything to you, like what we can talk about is that actions have consequences. Yes. And so actions have consequences. That means is, so let's say you're actually, the teachings say that you are self-harming if you are acting against the precepts, because that is harming your moral integrity. And that is very painful for the people who love you to know that. Yeah. So this is not about shaming or you're doing something wrong or you're being exposed. So that is usually like what we have in our culture, like, oh, I don't want them to know because then they kind of make fun of me, or like all this kind of thing, right? Shaming, blaming. This is not at all what this is about, but really just like, I don't want to disappoint them. Yeah. Because I know if they knew this, it would cause them pain, because maybe they know more about the consequences of this, right? Which I might not even be able to see. Yeah. And so you can, again, if you see that in the Buddhist lineage, in the Buddhist tradition, of just like, yeah, maybe like some teachers or your teachers, maybe they can see a little bit further than we can as students. Yeah. And it would pain them. And I don't want to cause them pain. Yeah. Which is very different from like, oh, I want to be a good girl and do things right. Yeah. Which of course that gets messy at times. Those two. Um, so it is really like love and respect for the other person. Yeah. So that is otapa. So that is like the external orientation. And what these really do, can you see that, right? So if you have those, and if you tune more into that and use them as guardians or as safeguards for your behavior, yeah, that can be very helpful to practice in that way. And there is, let me see if I can find that. There's a quote by Bhikkhu Bodhi about that. So where we fall usually out of our practice is when we fall victim pretty much to what we call the three root poisons, right? So greed, hatred, and delusion. So wanting something, not wanting something, and being really confused about what makes us happy. Yeah. So those are usually like why we're acting against the precepts. Yeah. We just think like, oh, I want this. Don't really care how I get it, right? And so what we're doing is when we're practicing this more and bring this more into awareness, we have this sense of like, again, we can use the word shame, but shame is so laden. But I think it's in the field, shame, guilt, regret, right? So I'm just throwing out different words and you can see what lands. So they alert us. They're like alarm bells that we're out of alignment with our values, right? And it's actually a very healthy and useful response. Does that make sense? If this is what I want to do, I want to know when I'm out of alignment. Yeah, and this is part of our practice, and this is in us. Yeah. And Bhikkhu Bodhi said is because we are so interconnected, this way, we make ourselves safeguards of the world. Yeah. Because if I am in alignment with my practice, then other people start to rely on that I am acting in alignment, or most of the time. Again, we're not about perfection, but if we're saying this is my practice and this is what I want to do, and just acknowledging, of course, we will slip and we'll make mistakes and all of this, but this is what I want to come back to, right? So if I tip over in one direction, I want to kind of like come back to balance, come back to center. Yeah, so what we're doing is we're really contribute towards the protection of the world. Yeah. And it just feels so relevant right now. Yeah. That we become protectors of the world through our practice. Yeah. And I find, yeah, this is not easy right now. Yeah. So especially, I mean, right now things can be said or done without any shame. Yeah, there is a certain level of shamelessness that is going on right now, right? That is really, I find that hard to watch. It's disturbing. Yeah, really, just like sometimes a lack of decency. It's just like really, really, right? And again, this like the harm that's being done to other people, to, I think, society, right? And then also, of course, to people who do that, which again, they don't, they see it differently. They don't see that. They don't feel that. Yeah. But then, so I think the question again is for each one of us, so how are we practicing that? Coming back to what are our core values? And to be really aware how difficult that is, right? How difficult this path is of, right? Coming back to the story of little Nola, yeah. Right. I sometimes when I think about that story, I'm thinking, I'm not sure I would have had the courage. Yeah. It's hard to, right? So the Buddha's teachings, and back in the time, they were called as to swim against the stream, against the stream. It's not easy to do. It's actually very scary to do that. It's not just hard, but it's really scary if everybody's swimming in the other direction. And so I think what's important for us is to again reflect about is so, is my loyalty to this system and structure right now, which is changing and which is underlies a lot of change and conditions, or am I leaning into something that is bigger and that is more time tested? Yeah. So, right. So again, you believe what you believe, but those teachings have been around for a couple of thousand years. So they have a certain time stamp on them. And what would happen? And again, this is really something I also sit with because I feel just it's so easy, or it's so like our nervous system are so what's the word? They're so wired, thank you. They're so wired to go with what the majority is, who is the loudest. And it's a part of us to keep us safe, right? So we have to be very clear about that, right? A lot of that is about safety. Yeah. And to honor that. Yeah. So not make that something that you're hard about yourself, but just to be aware and to keep asking yourself, like, is that necessary in this moment? Yeah, so where are like maybe small moments where I can be courageous, where I can be in my integrity? Yeah, so what are the things that, what can I do? Yeah. So, and again, I think if we're practicing it, or basically the more stable we are in what we call the refuges into the teachings, right? To say, like, this is how I want to orient myself. This feels important. So I'm not rudderless, right? So it gives us a rudder. And every ship needs like a rudder in order to steer the course which we want for our lives, right? And then to, yeah, really use this as a practice. Yeah, and to be, yeah, and to be honest with ourselves. And sometimes it's just like an internal honesty. So even if we can't be externally honest, sometimes just the conditions are not right, right? But to say like, yeah, actually, I wish I could do this differently, but I cannot right now, right? And this is again, I think, where then the self-compassion practice comes in. And a really interesting thing is, so I want to give you an example. So here's like the little reflection exercise that I want to do, kind of to give you a little bit more of a taste of this. So imagine, let's imagine a little imaginary task right now. So imagine you're walking down the street and there's a person walking in front of you, and the person is well dressed from what you can see from behind. And then a wad of cash is falling out of their back pocket. And you just see the cash falling down. And you can see that the bill on top is a $100 bill. The person keeps walking. They haven't noticed that the cash fell down. And so just imagine for a moment, and just imagine like you could use some money, like you're not, maybe not desperate, but like, oh, that would be nice. That seems to be a bunch of cash. And so to see, and nobody's watching, right? Person keeps walking on, gets in their car, drives off. Yeah. So they haven't noticed they lost the money. They will not remember where they lost it, right? And so in that moment before they get into that car, like, what's your impulse? Is your impulse to just put your foot on the money and then take out your phone and just stand there and look at your phone and wait for them to walk down? Or would you, right? And you can see how seductive that is. Yeah. So that moment is, it could be yours. Or you could just call after them and say, hey, you lost something. Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, this is quite like, again, like we can play with a lot of these image or like these scenarios, right? To see, but what we're doing when we do this, like we're entering kind of this realm of like, what am I doing when nobody's watching? Yeah, because then it gets really interesting. Yeah, because sometimes like we can be like very like one behavior when we're being watched and observed, right? And quite different when nobody's watching. Yeah, but in the end, what this practice is really about, it's just you. It's you and your brain, or you and your nervous system, and you're training yourself. Yeah. And again, like, and what we know is what we do, it's more likely we'll do it again. Yeah. And it becomes easier the next time we do it. Yeah. Just that slippery slope. And I think it's just such an interesting area of tension. Yeah. And such an interesting field of exploration. And there's so many opportunities to look closely. Yeah. And again, like not with like this, like you shouldn't, right? So the judgment, but just say like, oh, isn't that interesting? How I make this decision in that moment. Yeah. 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 Heather.
I was just gonna say thank you for.
Can you hear, or like, or you get the mic, just so you get the mic from.
Thank you for the clarity on that teaching, because I think it can be really misunderstood. Whereas in Siddhartha wasn't teaching so that we can be quote unquote good people. Siddhartha, the whole point was
Mm.
what's going to cause us to suffer and what isn't. And like you said, that the purpose is to get to that point, observe how we feel, and then we can do whatever we want with that, right? So if you are somebody who inherently doesn't have an issue with being dishonest, then suffering won't arise for you there. But the teaching then allows us to uncover what are the things that then are obscuring the heartfelt wish to live authentically and honestly.
Yeah.
So even if we don't feel that pull, like that internal ethical pull, right? It's like, well, then what is here?
Mhm.
And then the practice, as we go through that, the practice uncovers more and more and more, ultimately to live in a place where we don't create suffering for ourselves or
Yeah.
others, not because
Yeah.
it's good or bad, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, like I think we're so conditioned into the good or bad or right or wrong. Yeah. And again, so in the Buddhist teachings, it's about skillful or unskillful. And skillful is what brings more happiness to ourselves and to others, and unskillful it what brings more unhappiness to ourselves and others. And I think that's a good guideline. And also to see like happiness over time often. Yeah. So it's not like this immediate, I have to have this kind of thing, right? Makes me so happy right now, right? And then 5 minutes, just like, well, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Questions or comments?
I don't know. It brought back a repressed memory, not from Buddhism, but from Buckaroo Banzai. I'm
Yeah.
revealing my age, I guess, but it was that character is who you are in the dark.
The what? The character?
Character is who you are in the dark.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Yeah. I didn't grow up here, so I'm missing a lot of the cultural references. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I just am so grateful for this conversation because of where things are and how heavy it is and how easy it is to get wrapped up in the hatred and the anger and the
Mhm.
fear. The fear is what,
Yeah.
and it's like trying to understand what's in your control. And at the end of the day, all it is how your practice is the only thing that's in your control. I'm not saying that to like absolve.
Mhm.
I mean, practice is being in community and fighting for, well, even that word fighting, right? Like, and working towards what we care for. But it's just good to hear that, to be reminded if like there is a path and there is a
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
to not get wrapped up in it all.
Yes. Yeah. 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 And there is this, I can't quote it completely, but it's like to walk in peace amongst those who hate, right? That's a deep practice in itself. So not to be caught into hatred, yeah, but to stay with what's important to us and how hard that is. Because again, like our nervous systems are wired to respond, especially like so the whole like fight, flight, freeze. And again, it's like when we're in that, it's really out of our control. So the practice is really more, how can we overall be more stable so that we're not so easily sucked into it? And when we're sucked into it, which we will get sucked into it because we're human, how do we get out of it? And I think just like the, again, like having a bigger framework, right? Than just what's going on right now. So like, yeah, the Buddha taught this again, like 2,500 years ago. So I guess it was necessary back then. Yeah, and it will always be necessary because humans are humans. There will always be wars. There will always be lies. There will always be violence. And the question is, so how do I choose to walk through this world again with this nervous system that I have, right? Which is hard. Yeah, because we get hijacked all the time. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
How do you learn to distinguish between what is sort of your inner compass and what is essentially some kind of delusion, oftentimes like a self-enabling, it's self-justifying delusion. Oh, I deserve that money. You
Yes.
know, I've been working hard. I should get that, take it, you know. Yeah.
Awesome question. Awesome question. And it is hard sometimes to distinguish between the two. And I think that's part of our practice. Yeah. Because it's like it's really doing it over and over again. And then asking yourself, am I just lying to myself? Yeah. And then a good question always is again, like, will this in the long term bring happiness to myself and the world? Yeah. If I keep doing it this way, right? Because what we're doing is like we are reinforcing a behavior. Yeah. And if I keep showing up in the world in this way, is that beneficial? Yeah. And it's hard, totally hard, because we can yeah. Like we can be so confused. Yeah. Yeah. And then really practice helps. Practice helps coming together in community and talking about these things. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Last comment. Yeah.
I was wondering if you might be able to just touch briefly into the refuges, or is that what they're called? Like, are there the five refuge, or is
No,
it the five heaven?
we have 3 refuges and 5 precepts. So we love lists.
Isn't there like the heavenly abode, like,
No, that's something else.
Oh,
So,
that's
but there are 4. Yes.
okay,
So
4 heavenly abodes, 3 refuges?
3 refuges, 5 precepts.
Well, maybe just speak not to the precepts, but don't
The
know if
refuges?
maybe the refuges, because I feel like that's so pertinent, because
Yeah.
like it can be so too much sometimes.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Like
We
it's
we
too
need
much.
refuge.
And
Yes.
like
Yes.
I need refuge.
Yes, we all
to
need.
even
We
be
all need
able to
refuge. Yeah.
keep going at a certain
Yes,
point.
absolutely.
Like I'm
Yes.
breaking down,
Yes.
you know.
So, and also I just want to say I'll also be here next week, so we can also continue this conversation if you have time and come back next week. So the 3 refuges, or what we call the 3 jewels, are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So what that means is, so the understanding is we go for refuge all the time. Yeah, we go to refuge for shopping, like all these things that we do. Like it can be a way to feel a little bit more safe, right? So where do we get refuge? Where do we feel safe from the storm, right? And so in the Buddha is the potential of awakening, or the potential of enlightenment, right? Whatever that means to you, the potential of really developing a loving heart, and to develop equanimity, like all these beautiful qualities that you named earlier. So it's a potential. Really, with that understanding, the Buddha was a human being. He was not a god. Yeah. And he was able to do this. And this is, he says, because I was able to do this, you are able to do it if you practice. Yeah. So, and it's like going for refuge in change. Yeah. Change and growth. And the second one is the Dharma, which are the teachings, which is basically the map that we use. This is how we do this. And this is again, like, this is why I say these teachings have been around for a really long time. They have been time tested, they work, and that can be a refuge. This is how we actually come to a place of being more like the Buddha, right? Or developing and growing. And then the third one is this community, coming together. Yeah, coming together in community, and then also the community of all the people who have walked this path before us. Yeah, which started before the Buddha, which is endless, which is really refuge in our ancestors, right? Which is important to remember. It's like this, we didn't make this up. Yeah, I didn't invent this. This has been passed down, and you will pass that on. And how beautiful that is. Yeah. And to also really to acknowledge that we need each other. Yeah. It is important for us to come together in person and online, mixed in whatever way, because it's hard to do it. by ourselves. I don't even think we can do it by ourselves. Yeah. So we really need each other. Yeah. And so when you're showing up here, you're actually taking refuge. Yeah. And just to remind yourself that that is an active act of taking refuge. Yeah. Thank you for that question. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Hope I see you next week. If you have time, come.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
just a quick announcement. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So
No,
sorry.
no,
Did
no,
not
no,
mean to interrupt your goodbye to our lovely online community. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. And for if you didn't get a chance to make a donation and you would like to tonight to help us continue to pass these teachings forward freely, then we can help you with that up front. And I also just like to always say this when we have talks where, things come up related to the current moment in this world, that everyone is very welcome here, no matter your views or, your background or perspective or anything. So, I just want to really emphasize that for us all. And it's wonderful to come together to discuss these kind of things. So thank you.